Hey, greetings. Welcome back. I'm GriffinGamingRPG. Today is Tuesday. What is the day? Is the 5th? September the 5th. Hope you guys are doing well. Hope you had a great weekend. For those of you in the States, I hope you guys had a great holiday. Again, my name is GriffinGamingRPG, and this is my show. We're on Tuesdays during the week and Thursdays. I live stream, and in particular on Tuesdays, we've been taking a look of a throwback, if you would say. That was usually it's a Thursday throwback, but it's a Tuesday throwback, where we go back and we've been looking at the series 10 for the Chairman that was done by Chris Roberts, CEO of Cloud Imperium Games. Imperium Games. I never know which title they go by. But anyway, the reason why I chose to go so far back, we're talking about literally 10 years back, or 10 to 9 years now, because it went into 2014. One of the reasons why I decided to go back and look at this is because I've talked with a lot of backers of Star Citizen, and many of them don't know the history of the development of the game and the vision in particularly of the game. Very easy to get into Star Citizen in its current state, and that current state could be as of this year or 3 years ago or 5 years ago, and really not know all of what was encompassed in Chris's vision for what this game would be. So far, from my perspective, and this is my perspective only, CIG has done a pretty close development of what he wants this game to be. Now, I know that's going to be subjective to some people, because there's some people who say, well, they haven't delivered anything. Some people who will say they've delivered a lot. I believe that the things that they have delivered have been probably 90% close to what he stated those things would be in the game. And as time goes by, we see that progress further when we see certain aspects of the development, what they're working on. We can see how that's starting to go from 0 to 10% of it to 40% to 70% of it, even if it's not in our hands. But I really wanted to be able to go back and do these flashbacks into the vision of Chris Roberts and allow people who maybe don't have the time or didn't even know that these videos were out there to be able to find out and see what it was that Chris Roberts wants this game to be in the end, not what it is right now. And I know there's a lot of hopium and copium in there mixed in. But there's also a lot of reality, and the reality of development is that it takes a while. Many of you guys have been recently playing Starfield. People seem to be having a good time playing it and enjoying it, which is great. I'm glad the game was not a disaster or a failure or even mediocre. People seem to be really enjoying the game. But even listening to the developer, Todd Howard, who's over at Bethesda, talked about how there was a 7 to 8 year journey for them to develop that game, and that there were a lot of struggles with doing it. And the depth that they were shooting for is what they did, is what they accomplished. And hopefully it's going to be a game that people who bought it will not only play now, but will continue to play, and that they'll build that franchise out. Another space franchise game is always a cool thing. And they're at different levels. There's the arcadey stuff. There's stuff that's based around role play. There's stuff that's based around story. We can have it all. There's no reason why it has to be any one thing. So anyway, beyond my preaching here, let's get into it. We're going to look at, we've been looking through episodes 1 through 9 over the past few weeks. I wasn't here last Tuesday. I was late this Tuesday because I had some stuff going on, but I'm here now. So we're going to try to cut through these episodes 10, 11, and 12 this week. I'll share my thoughts with you. Of course, if you're in chat, you can share your thoughts with me, and let's just hop into it. Okay, let's see. Let's change to that, and let's hit it. I can get my mouse in the right place here.
Hello everyone, this is another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those of you that haven't watched it before, this is where I take 10 questions from our subscribers and answer them as well as I can. And our subscribers are the part of our community that are contributing extra money every month to help us generate a lot of this community content that we do. So 10 for the Chairman, Wingman's Hangar, obviously the Jump Point magazine, and a lot of the sort of community content that we do on the website is really funded by the generous contributions of subscribers. So thank you all. And I thought would be fun at the top of this episode would be to invite David Haddock, who is the lead writer and has been working with me on the universe in Star Citizen since the beginning, because I thought maybe it'd be fun to give you a bit more insight into sort of some of the thinking that we do in building the game. So, and we'll key it off the very first question we have on the 10 for the Chairman here, which Banjo asks, my favorite thing about Star Citizen is the tiny details that show you have obviously put a lot of thought into the game's world. What would surprise us the most to hear that you had planned in advance? So I thought that was a good question to segue into kind of a little aside that we'll do here in 10 for the Chairman. But yes, we put a vast amount of thought into the world and how we built it. I think in general, I've talked in the past about how when me and Dave were brainstorming the world of Star Citizen, we were trying to think about historical analogs for it, and we settled on sort of Roman times, the sort of decline and fall of the Roman Empire. But to give you another example, this is one that I actually think is quite neat. We have a book here. Go on, Dave. You want to talk about
this
kind
is
of
actually,
what we're approaching?
Yeah, this is a huge book, History of Architecture. Very, very big. Features a lot of nice line-drawn images. But yeah, we basically Chris had an idea a few weeks ago, actually before the summit, about putting more thought into the sort of the planet-side architecture. So when you go to a city, if you go to a city in Europe, for example, you're seeing a clash of a bunch of different eras of architecture, modern beside, architecture from 500 years ago and stuff like that. And so we wanted to have that feeling, so it didn't just feel like we kind of, built these planet-side locations in one fell swoop and they just sort of exist in one time. So
yeah, and I would say that, like, for me, kind of one of the big issues in a lot of science fiction games, even movies, I see is that it's all sort of created by the artist at the time, so he sort of does it as one sort of unified idea of a city or of a building. And the problem for me is basically that's not the way the real world works. I mean, even in a American city, which a lot of the cities around here are much older than 100 years or 200 years old, there's a vast amount of architecture difference even from 20 years ago. I mean, what the style of buildings built in the 50s is very different than in the 60s, than in the 70s, than in the 80s, and the 90s, and now we're sort of into the 21st century. And you can even, just if I go and look at a house built in the 90s, I'm like, this doesn't look so as cool as I thought. And that's only 10 or 20 years. And so if you look at cities that have been around for 500, 1,000 years, you can definitely feel that they're built up over time, and there's lots of different parts of the city that sort of have very distinct architectural styles. And so, I guess one of the things that was always bugging me when I was looking at some of our concept was like, well, it just sort of feels too unified. Like an architect came in and just designed the whole city. And outside of, say, Paris, where Napoleon III basically raised the middle of the city and had one architect essentially template it out, that doesn't really happen very often. And so kind of the idea that we wanted to do was come up with a way that we can sort of have our, depending on, like, Earth would have a very different feel than, say, Terra, which was newer, but Terra is still pretty developed compared to, say, an outpost. And so so from that we sort of discussed about, okay, well, we need different architecture styles and times. And so Behavior, who's also working on doing the planet side stuff, started to throw ideas out with Dave here, and we sort of were kicking it around. So yeah, we thought, do you want to, this is a pretty awesome document where basically each century since today through where the game starts.
And it's it's also at the same time, it becomes a tricky thing because you don't want to make it too customized, because otherwise we'll never get it done. So basically what we did was we worked out, Dave Richard from Behavior sort of worked out a series of progressions of architectural styles throughout the millennium. So we basically kind of worked out a fictional document where we went through each century, talking about what major events happened, and how could that drive the architectural movements, and start some and end others, and how did the discovery of the Banu affect the architecture, did it not? The Messer era, how did that affect architecture, stuff like that. So we started basically putting together this what turned into a somewhat sprawling document of basically the history of human architecture for the next 1,000 years, using references and photos and stuff like that to kind of help the artists plot these sort of different visual cues throughout the landscape to kind of, mess with the cities, so they look a little bit more lived in and a little bit more unique.
Let me stop there for a second. I think this is pretty cool because I don't think that people think about the narrative team, that there's a lot of groundwork and research that they have to do beforehand that helps them get their minds in the right space about writing story. And we don't really have any examples of this in the game right now because we're just in Stanton. But we do have it in certain aspects as far as culture goes, or the society goes. In New Hurston now, New Babbage, jeez. In the new Lorville now. When we first got Lorville, everything kind of looked the same. And then when we got Lorville 2.0, we saw that the area closest to the business district now has a much more modern, up-to-date, more expensive look to it. Whereas you sprawl out further outside of the city, it starts to become a little bit more run down. The buildings don't look as great. They're not as lit up and with neon and holograms around them and any of that stuff. That kind of reflects an economic dynamic of where the common person or the workers live versus the people who have wealth in the society live. But here they're talking about architecture, how it sprawls over time and how architecture changes over time. And you'll have older looking buildings. And like I live in the Midwest, I live in Chicago. I've got buildings that have been around since the 1800s. They're stone. The architecture's incredible about them all, hand cut carvings and things in them. And then you've got a building right next to it that's made out of glass and steel, completely different architecture designs. But you do get the feeling of time and seeing history when you do that. And so they're saying that they want to be able to do something similar to that in the game. Hey, Ops Chief, they want to do something similar to that.
What were the different, do we have our names from, or are we?
Yeah, we have a handful. Colonial style, which is sort of
right.
After the terraforming of Mars, everyone became infatuated with sort of prefabricated colonial thing. My personal favorite is Chrysalistic Aesthetics, which was some guy who was obsessed with cocoons. So it was all these sort of weird cocoon.
The retro primitive movement.
Oh yeah, retro primitive. People thinking we were advancing too far, so they were going for a more homegrown lifestyle.
And then the 24th century is Asharianism.
Asharianism, yeah, that was a movement that was dedicated to, since we were terraforming planets, we had an obligation to sort of build in accordance with the planet, not necessarily just wherever we wanted to do. So it's more about planetary development and planning, which is what Terra ended up adopting, hence why they're sort of built more in harmony with their environment rather than some of the other ones.
And the 25th century, I guess, predominant style is colonial style, sort of coming back to colonial.
Yeah.
And Banu hybridism,
yeah,
which I guess would be taking parts of the Banu
yeah.
architecture. And then the sub-movement is exo-Gothic. What's
exo-Gothic. That? It was sort of exalting humanity's achievements, but in a new kind of futuristic type spin on it, basically. Yeah,
that's kind of like what they did when we used to have here in the World Exposition, how the World Exposition would get to this turn of the century thing, and they would kind of exalt, all of our advancements is humanity. Very similar kind of thing that they would do. That's very cool. They're thinking about stuff like that.
Cool. And then 26th century has Henoism and Metaclassicism.
Yeah. Henoism, due to the Tavaran War and the expansions and the sort of fringe things, it was a kind of defensive aesthetic to, people were afraid of being attacked, so there was much more of kind of probably reinforced walls, slimmer windows, all that type of stuff. Metaclassicism is more of like kind of the classic kind of Rome architecture columns and,
And then I think 27th century we got to monumentalism, exaltation, which I guess would be the peak of the Messer area.
Yeah.
And so that would be, I guess, kind of like Rome at its height, right?
Right.
Where you're building these huge colosseums, monuments.
Exactly, and that sort of World War II German type, Fritz Lang metropolis type stuff.
Right. Cool. And then 28th century is Meta Baroque. And the sub-movement is revolutionary art.
Yeah, it was sort of the Messer of that time. I think we were sort of playing with the idea that he wanted to make the people feel small. If exaltation is sort of humanity at its height, this was more of a Baroque thing, so he wanted to make the people feel insignificant. So sort of huge vaulted ceilings, also anything that would make you feel like in awe of what you're a part of, basically.
And what's revolutionary art?
That was a sort of subculture that was beginning to rise up against the Messer era. So it's like graffiti, anything that would kind of incite them, antagonize them, type thing.
And then we get to
and then they go down.
29th century, so predominant styles Ultra Deco and organic architecture, and the sub-movement is Jean Fusion.
Yeah, so sort of
Jean Fusion. I have been corrected on the forums that I'm not pronouncing Jean correctly, or Sean correctly, I guess it was, is for the Chinese pronunciation. But they're not really Chinese; they're actually from a different part of the galaxy.
Yeah. But yeah. So after all these sort of hundreds of years of oppression, basically it was sort of an explosion of creativity. So everyone was trying to do these sort of unique shapes and glass, and of course the Xi'an was sort of the Cold War. So of course they're going to embrace their design aesthetics and stuff like that.
And then we get to now, which is where the game's set, which is Meta Bauhaus, which I guess is the supermodernism. And then what's biomimicry?
It's sort of a very weird kind of sweeping shapes. It's sort of almost kind of like organic architecture type things, like these sort of very strange structures. It's kind of tough to describe. It was a very involved wiki search
to get that.
Trying to find.
So there you are. So that is the kind of thought that goes into building this universe and world. I think that answers the first question.
I'm curious as to whether or not it's like, is this the normal depth that narrative teams would go through, or is this something unique to Star Citizen? I know, they're trying to build a universe here, and like all games aren't trying to build a universe per se. But I am curious to know if this is like the standard thing, or whether this is kind of them doing what some people would say doing the most, right? Doing extra. And I mean, that's cool. I think it's cool that they're doing it. Of course, if it's the extra, we can understand why it's taking time to do stuff. If it's the norm, then okay, cool, but I'm just personally curious about that.
There's probably plenty of other things that would surprise you to be planned in advance, but I would definitely think probably no one would think that would be deep diving that far in terms of planning out the architecture. All right, so that was a rather long aside for question one, so I'll be much quicker on these next ones. So Armand Hammer asks, I know you have said in the past that the Idris is not really meant to be a ship that is played solo. However, I'm still guessing that you'll be able to fly it solo if you wanted. Is this true? Honestly, haven't made my mind up, because there are certain ships that I feel like you need to play with other players to man correctly. Things like the Constellation, the Freelancer, you don't have to. You can hire either NPC crew and do it yourself. I haven't made the decision on the Corvette because it's definitely on it's sort of on that cusp. Anything bigger than a Corvette, I think you're definitely going to have at least several other players to play it with you. Potentially the Corvette, maybe you could have some NPCs. But I'm sort of leaning towards sort of making that more of a multi-crewed ship that you invite some of your friends to fly with you, but full decision isn't made on that one, so kind of still up in the air. All right, next question.
Let me ask a question about that. Maybe you guys can tell me, for those of you who are here, why do people want to fly an Idris by themselves? Now, I guess I get it to a certain degree. Okay, let me tell you what I mean by that. I used to play Eve, and in Eve, you could start out with the smallest ship there was, all the way up to a freaking Titan. I think it was a mile long, or however long it was big. And you could fly that by yourself. But, it was a point and click kind of thing, right? I've never heard anyone say, now that actually we have, because when you play Star Trek and Star Trek Online, you can fly a Starship Enterprise or whatever by clicking, and just you, right? You man, you everything. Is that the reason why people want to fly these ships solo? Because they've gotten these other games that are quote unquote, in theory, multi-crew ships, but people fly them on their own. Because you keep hearing this thing. I mean, even now, this was 9 years ago, but even now, people say, "Oh, I want to fly my Idris by myself." And I don't hear anybody saying, "Oh, I want to take the Royal Caribbean cruise ship out on my own." I want to take the USS Enterprise, the battle, the aircraft carrier out on my own. Where is this at? I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. What does Senyala say? If you create your own IP, then this is about it. Oh yeah, if you create a game on the existing Star Wars, Star Trek, yeah, this is much effort. Yeah. Good point. Yeah, Solo Idris. Okay, Kai. How you doing, buddy? All right, let's go on to the next question.
Question comes from OB Locke. Will the Origin 890 Jump, RSI Orion, Aegis Survivor, and Volcaric, Miss Cull C, and the Drake Herald become available as single ship pledge packages before release?
Wow. Let me ask about that. I don't remember a Surveyor? The Aegis Surveyor? I do not remember that. Maybe one of you guys remember an Aegis ship that was supposed to be called the Surveyor, or maybe it was renamed something else, or maybe they never released it. But I've never remember hearing of that. Everything else, of course, we've heard of. Will it become available as single ship?
Herald become available as single ship pledge packages before release? That's a good question, and again, we haven't fully decided what we're going to do there. But I'm willing to say that quite a few of those probably will be available before the game comes out. Definitely
They were all available before the game came out. Yeah.
And then the other ones, the ones that all you guys actually voted for, probably. I mean, they really just have to be in the pipeline. So we're just getting going on sort of designing on the concept stage, and then obviously going model. But we're still, haven't hit the concept stage on a bunch of these ones because we've got a huge backlog of ships to do. I think there's over 50 different ships that we have to do at the moment. All right, next question comes from...
that's something interesting. This is in 2014, and he said that they had 50 ships that they had not even begun doing concept on. So that tells you something. 50 ships in 2014, they had not begun concept on them. Be aware of that.
Krell, who asks, will a convoy made primarily of haulers ever be able to legitimately defend itself against a raiding party of fighters? Does CIG perhaps have some cutting game mechanics in mind that will help us ensure a reasonable balance of power? I would think if you're hauling a bunch of cargo and you've got well defended or well armored
it became the carrot
cargo ships, and perhaps you've hired some mercenaries or some friends of yours to fly escort with you, you should be able to defend yourself against a raiding party of fighters. I mean, if you're flying completely unarmed cargo freighters and that's it, and there's fighters, then obviously you won't be able to. But I mean, we're designing most of the ships to have weaponry. So like the Freelancer is, a pretty well armed sort of cargo ship. Maybe the Starfarer isn't as maneuverable as something like a Freelancer will be, but it's certainly going to have guns and turrets, and you probably, if you're taking a Starfarer and taking a whole bunch of goods somewhere, you'll probably hire a few people to fly escort for you. So that's kind of how you'd have to approach that, which, you can hire NPCs, or you can have your friends help you, or hire other players. So I'm hoping that will ensure a reasonable balance of power. And then, of course, if you're trading in sort of the safe areas, the regulated areas, then there are significant penalties for people trying to attack you and raid you, and so you're likely to be fairly safe, say, trading inside the core UAE worlds, but as you get further out, you'll be less safe. Okay, next question comes from Shiamen Ryusaka, who probably mispronounced.
Sure. Yeah, Cosmic, how are you?
Can you pause the stream?
I did.
Okay, I sent you a Discord message. The 32 million goal, the goal for hitting 32 million was an Aegis Surveyor.
Mm-hmm.
It's an industrial quality salvage ship equipped with reinforced cargo bay, a long-range jump drive, and launch pods for unmanned drones. Okay?
Oh, okay. Now
we don't have it yet, but we will get it because it was one of the goals, the original goals.
Oh, Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Cosmic. Because that was one that just slipped my brain.
To all of your viewers, I apologize for interrupting the stream. I just thought you'd like to know.
No. They know that people can come in and talk to me during the show, so that's not
Chris Roberts has pledged several times that every one of the original goals and it went up to like 60-some million.
Right.
All of those will be in the game, and this is the 32 million goal.
Okay, yeah, I completely forgot about the surveyor, though. Okay.
If you go up to check the funding and then scroll down, it shows
I know. Yeah, I know. It's at the tier. Yeah, on the tiers. I get it.
I'm telling your viewers this. Okay.
Yeah. Yep, I get it. Okay. Aegis Surveyor. I'm reading it now. Okay. Interesting.
Okay, cool.
This is industrial quality salvage ship. Holy smoke. Okay. There you go. So
pretty
that
cool.
means
Drones and everything. You see that? Drones.
Yeah.
Now, I got a feeling because it says drones, I think it'll be an Aegis equivalent of the Orion for mining. This will be the big salvage ship.
Yeah. Interesting.
Because it's got drones, you see.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Cosmic. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Sorry.
No problem. Alrighty, that's a little bit of help there in the old history area. That's why we're going back and look at this stuff. Like I said, there's stuff that I know other players don't have any idea. I completely forgot about the Surveyor, and I've looked at that doggone stretch goals thing a million times. I don't know why I forgot it. Okay, here we go. Let's continue on.
Okay, next question comes from Shiamen Ryusaka, who we probably mispronounced, who writes, is it possible to have modules which allow the transfer shield in cost of your own capacitor to another or even remotely repair someone's whole armor? All right, so I'm guessing that Shiamen Ryusaka's first language isn't English, but my guess at the question is, can I take my shield or the energy or the capacitor the shield and transfer it to someone else to either, I guess, protect them or repair their whole armor? And I would, if that was the question, I would say that no, it's not possible for you to sort of take your shield and transfer it somewhere else or to help repair other people. You can definitely, on your own shield, manage energy to it and power to it, so you can have more power go to the front shields or the back shields, and if one of your segments is failing, you can maybe pump more power to it, because basically the regeneration rate of a shield is based on the amount of power that's pumped to it. And so you can manage that, and we have a whole interface in the HUD for that. Next question.
You guys
comes from Smart.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Signala. This sounds like a hybrid of the Reclaimer and the Carrack. Sounds like there's like a mixture of the two of those. But it's interesting. Let me go back to this question that just was asked a second ago. Some of you all remember in Eve. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. In Eve, you used to be able to do that. A ship could come and it did something. God, it's been so long since I played Eve. It's been 10 years. But I thought there was some ships that used to be able to do some type of beam thing to you and enhance you or something. Does anybody remember what I'm talking about? That shield healing. Okay, the shield healing beam. Thank you. That's what it was. So they did have that. And that's what this person's asking. Will you be able to do something similar to that in Star Citizen? Okay. I knew that sounded familiar. I'm like, it sounds like this we used to do in Eve. Okay, here we go. Let's go with Smartace. Thanks, Kai.
Next question comes from Smartace, who asks, will there be different types of jump points in the persistent universe? Example, one-way jump points, collapsing jump points that larger ships can't use, jump points that require special equipment to use after they're discovered, etc. So I would say, yes, there will be different jump points. Dave, I mean, let's see. I think we've discussed this, but we haven't really designed fully the mechanics on this, right? We've talked about potentially having some jump points that only some smaller ships could path, or maybe it's you have to you've got to fly it with a small ship, and then a bigger ship has to fly it. It's a different route.
Right, and the recently unlocked or the proposed stretch goal one was the human one that where the jump point collapsed, but we don't know if that's going to be sort of a persistent thing or.
Right. Well, I mean, there'll definitely be jump points that will go from one system to another system, and you won't be able to come back.
Right.
So you always have to find the entrance and so it's not necessarily, there could be one-way jump points and there could be two-way jump points.
Right.
And there will definitely be collapsing jump points. It's just more about the jump points that larger ships can't use. We haven't 100%.
Right.
We've had that discussion because we were talking about it in the Squadron 42 story, where it would like there's going to be parts in Squadron 42 where we're actually going to charge on point and go into uncharted territory, and we were debating about, do you go through with the
Can a carrier follow you?
The carrier, yeah. Can the carrier follow you, or do you chart the jump point just in the fighter? So we haven't fully figured that out, but there will definitely be different parts. So they got a tiny little bit of info on Squadron 42 too.
That was a tiny little bit, but it is cool to hear. So we do know that CIG later on did form out, at least there were 3 different types of jump points as far as scale size. There was supposed to be small, medium, and large. Hence also why ships are rated that way as 2. I don't know if that means it's small and extra small are one, medium and large or another, and large and capital or another. I don't know how they're going to break that down. They also talked about multiple entry points into a wormhole, and they said this before. When they showed us the gaseous cloud version of Pyro, they talked about that there would be different ways that you could go through it. It wasn't just like one entry point, because as you guys saw, that wormhole was really big. So I'm assuming that means that larger ships may have a certain access point versus a smaller ship may have a different one, which means multiple people can go through it at different places, all this other stuff. I did think the idea that they talked about if a small ship were to try to escape and go to a certain wormhole, that if they were being chased by a larger ship, that might be a means of them escaping, because the larger ship can't enter at that same point. Now, maybe they have to enter at a different point, but they don't come out where the small ship came out. I don't know. It's pretty interesting to hear that. They also talked about, they knew that they did talk about wormholes that would not persist, temporary anomalies that would pop up for a period of time and disappear. They have confirmed that they wanted to do something like that. So we'll have to, Guy, every time he waves his hands, he gets 10 million. All right, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see where they're going to go with this thing with wormholes.
Okay, so next question comes from Scurry Panda, who asks, what kind of peripheral support can we expect to see in the first iteration of the Dogfight module? Specifically, are there plans to integrate Trek IR into the first version? Okay, so Trek IR probably will not be on the first release of the Dogfight module, but Oculus Rift may be, but that's sort of dependent on Crytek, because they're doing some work to fix some of the lag issues we have when we have an implementation of it and we're using it, but it's a bit too laggy to be useful. If they fix those implementations, then there will be a certain level of Oculus Rift, but that would be a sort of later focus, because right now we really just want to get the Dogfighting V1 out so everyone can use it, but I want to get the Rift running as soon as possible, and then obviously right after that will be Track IR, but probably not from Dogfight V1, possibly for the Rift though. Okay, next question.
Now, if you want to talk about ambition, this was ambition. This is still in CryEngine. And for those of you who were around back in the early days with Arena Commander, you'll remember that some people were running their Oculus. The Rift was actually, some people figured out how to use it, and you could do like the whole VR thing. But it later, over time, they started to say, well, you know what, VR is going to be something that we do want, but we're going to put it in the background, we're going to table it, and we'll get to it later, because it wasn't a priority, especially because you think about the percentage of people, especially at that time, who owned the VR devices. They were becoming very popular, but they weren't also in the hands of consumers at the level of putting that level of development to probably was not worth it. Even now, there's still a small percentage of people who play games that have the Oculus, for example. Now I don't know if they were doing it so that it would also run on the other VR gadgets that were out at the time, because all I remember was the Oculus was the one that actually everybody used. Maybe it was compatible with other ones, but as we know, VR has been kind of tabled for a while.
Question comes from Nicro, who asks, myself and a few of my mates are planning on being bounty hunting as our main job in the Pacific Universe. Can you clarify if there will be an official bounty system, and if so, how will it work? Okay, so yes, there will definitely be an official bounty system. Do you want to add anything? I mean, I could throw out what, my understanding or thought of what we've been talking about.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've read some of the design documents that like Rob and Nate have written up, but I'm not as.
You're on the spot.
Yeah.
So, basically on the bounty, on the the bounty hunting, there will be an official list of bounties. I mean, it'll be like whatever you like, you know, the FBI most wanted list or whatever you would have, the United Nations most wanted list, and those will appear. Like, so we're planning to have sort of a mission board that will be per system, and sort of it's where you would go to look for work, and that mission board would have different subcategories. So, you know, if you're a trader and you're just a truck, basically a trucker, and you're like, okay, I want to haul cargo, you can go there, and there'll be jobs for you to either, you know, just take cargo that you're getting paid for a run from here to here. There'll be jobs for you to fly someone else's ship, and the same goes on bounty hunting. Like, if you're a bounty hunter, you'll go there, and it'll be like seeing the posted bounties, which is kind of what happens in America for bounties. Is, you know, there's posted, you know, the FBI or the local police will have bounties out to bring in, you know, various people on the run, and so there will be sort of a global bounty hunting system that there will be benefits for, and it won't be just going after people in space. There'll be some tracking that you can will do down on the planet side. So it should be pretty cool. But yeah, there will be definitely an official bounty system.
Some of you guys remember, if you played Star Wars Galaxies, there was a bounty system in there that people really enjoyed doing, especially because taking on the bounty hunter career gave you the ability to hunt down Jedi, which was a lot of people really liked doing that. It's one of the few games I remember where bounty hunting actually worked and worked pretty well. I don't remember what the ways were, it's been so long, but there was somewhere or other that bounty hunters had the ability to track and follow after Jedi. And so I know in Eve there was a bounty hunting system, but it was broken. You could put bounties on people, but it really didn't mean very much. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, because even though we talk about a lot of people who are lawless or may do some unscrupulous things in the verse, there's even more people who want to go after those type of folk. Not to mention the NPCs and things of that nature and the law system that's built into the game. So I think that the whole bounty hunting thing will be really cool. Not just for people who solo play, but even a group of friends who might decide to, 3 or 4 people who say we're going to go out as a team of bounty hunters. That's going to be a whole nother thing of the game. I think will be really cool as well.
Okay, so next question comes from Faye Yunus Kedar. I'm sure I butchered that too. Are you reworking the constellation like you did the Avenger? So the answer is yes, we are reworking the constellation like you did the Avenger. We are doing some design modifications to make loading and unloading cargo much easier, to maximize the cargo space, and also not have it conflict with the entrance and launching of the Merlin. And we're also considering moving the living quarters to the front, nearby where the piloting section is, so the back is just cargo and the engine room, which I think there were a fair number of threads about that quite a while ago. So that's in the works, as well as some variants. So it'll take a bit of time, but it should be very cool. Next question comes from Jay Renier.
So you guys know that the constellation has been modified 4 times. We're on the Mark IV right now. I came in back around Mark II, I think is when I got mine. I was so excited about that ship. I thought it was so cool. It had the little dining table that came down out of the ceiling, which was a pain in the butt because you'd hit your head on it as well. But the designs have improved on it dramatically over the years. It's been a while since we've had an update. I want to say it's been in its current state at least 6 or 7 years, maybe 6 years now. It's about that old. Taurus is the newest one that we've seen, and it refined. It's pretty much the same thing, just a bigger version, but they did move some things around because if you remember, originally there was a smuggling compartment that was supposed to be behind the pilot's seat. They moved it to the rear of the ship. But they're going to do one more hit on it, guaranteed, because we have not gotten to the point where components are removable and things of that nature. So there will probably be at least one more overhaul of the Constellation series ships.
Who asks, could you explain how EVA, in brackets extra vehicular activity, will work in the game? Will we be able to repair damage to our ships or explore wrecks, etc.? So yes, you will be able to repair damage to your ship and you'll be able to explore wrecks. So we're going to have EVA in the game. Pretty much most of the ships have sort of airlocks that will allow you to go to the outside. Some of the ships like The Hornet doesn't really have that. It would have to open the canopy, you'd have to vent the space, and then you'd have to detach yourself from the seat. But yeah, we have full sort of zero-G plan for movement. So if you have a sort of an EVA suit, it'll have little thrusters on it for you to move around. You'll also be able to grab hold of side of things. So if you think of like the movie Gravity, so that's all stuff actually that is on the team that's working on the sort of first-person boarding. Is they've got that sort of zero-G combat EVA stuff on their plate, and we're focusing on simulating that correctly. And the idea would be that you would use that to go outside to potentially board other ships, or potentially go out and sort of do some patch-up repairs. You'll never be able to properly repair your ship. You'd have to do that down on the planet. But just to get you going, those are all things that you'd do. And I definitely think there could be a case where you would like sort of EVA into a space wreck, which is essentially kind of a boarding mission. So yeah, and it should be really cool. All right, there we go. So that is the end of this episode of 10 for the Chairman. Probably a little longer than normal, but hopefully you enjoyed the insight into the architecture, sort of thought we've had behind how the cities would develop and the places would, and the other questions you found hopefully illuminating. And I will see you next week. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was episode 10 of 10 for the Chairman. Let me throw a question out there. Do you guys think, remember I said the reason why I'm going over these shows is because I've talked about Chris. We did a show on Soul Citizens a few weeks ago called Visions, Dreams, and Reality. And we said that basically there were three processes of this development process. Is the vision side, which is what you're looking at right now. It's Chris telling you a vision of what he wants the game to be. There's the dream side of it that once we, the backers, hear it, that we grab hold to, and the things that we would like to see in the game that we dream about and we say we look forward to, or I can't wait until. And then there's the reality. What's the end product of what this whole project is about? And my question is, I'm looking at some of the things that Kai is putting in, and I think I understand where he comes from, and I know Kai personally, so I know where he's at. But I do want to present this as a general question to you guys. Is it too much for backers to hear vision? That's going to be my question to you guys. Is it too much for backers to hear vision? Badu Josh, thank you. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. Can players, I'm gonna try to say this as gently as possible. Can we as players mentally handle the visionary space? Or is it better for us to just dream and then get the reality? What do you guys think? I have mixed feelings about it. I think it's intriguing. I think it's nice to see vision. I think our best example of that would have been when the roadmap was out. When the roadmap was out, when we used to get a full year coverage of the roadmap, probably 60% of that was vision, what they would like to do, what they were attempting to do. We dreamed in that, but it also put a lot of stress on a lot of the backers. When they pulled it back from vision and dream and brought it more to reality and said, this is what we can deliver and this is what's going to come out, all the hubbub stopped. Got quiet. Folks stopped talking about it. You don't even hear anybody talking about the roadmap anymore. You don't hear people talking about broken promises. No, it's not a hint. It's not Kai, it's not a hint. I think you're raising some good points because your feelings are the feelings of much of the community. And Kai and I've had this conversation before, and I've said, a lot of this is going to be what will history say in the end. Will we look back with fondness? Will we look back with frustration? Will we look back feeling futility? Will we look back and feel it was worth it? Will we look back and say it was good, but man, it wasn't worth all the aggravation? I'm really curious as to what you guys think, because I'm not sure. Admiral Kusanagi, let's look at what Admiral Kusanagi says. Actually, they should stop giving us crap. Kill it all. Citizen Con is the only time we should look for any info, any. And see, Admiral, just like there are people who might feel that way, who'll say, listen, just talk to us when you've got something. There are the other people who want everything, like the people who call for transparency, right? I mean, you've got the people who say, we want to know everything. Shady, what's Sadie saying? Gamers handle reality? Of course not. But to be fair, no matter what CI judge, they can't win. Yeah, I mean, the reality side, I think they handle. I think that when they get stuff in their hands, they're okay. My point, Shady, is the fact that they hear vision, the fact that they hear it so early, does that become a detriment? It's great for building, enthusiasm for the project, but is it also something that can become toxic or cancerous just because the way gamers are? I'm not even talking about whether or not it's delivered in a certain timely manner or anything. I'm saying, what does that do to the psyche of us as gamers? Can gamers handle that when it's something that they really, really want? Kai, but that was 10 years ago. This next July, if a dude promised me to build a building a decade ago and he gets half of $1 billion to do so, how do you feel shut down in that jobs? Give me another game. Yeah, there's a part of that, Kai, I would agree with, but this is where we will disagree. I don't think that the amount of time that has gone by has been unjustified time when it comes to what they're trying to do. Now, if we were not trying to do the persistent universe and we were just doing Star Citizen the game, I would say 10 years is it. Y'all, the average game, AAA game is 7 to 12 years. 7 to 12 on any major games that have been out there that were significant. 7 to 12 years, okay? And that was quite often with those studios, not studios that were starting from ground zero. There were studios that were fully in, they had everything in place. If we take our favorite game that we've talked about, No Man's Sky, which started also in 2011, 2012, they're just getting that game to where they wanted it. And it only holds 4 people, and it's taken them 12 years to get there, or 10 years to get there. So CIG, I am defending them. In this case, as far as development history goes, they are not outside of what any other game company has done at that level. But developing 2 games simultaneously, starting with a studio from ground zero, having some faux pas and building a business, those are the things that I say, okay, I'll give them some space for. I'm not happy about it. I'm not cheering. I'm saying that's a reality. But my question is it better when when those disclosures are not out there, when they're not out there? Yes, you're right. So that's why I said, if you don't count Squadron 42, that's why I said, if you're just talking about Squadron 42 only, yeah, 10 years is a sufficient amount of time to have delivered. But I'm wondering, was this a good thing? And again, I don't think history is going to be able to answer it. Will history be the thing that will finally answer it? Because I don't have the answer. I don't know if showing all this stuff was a good thing. Maybe it was, in the sense of fundraising and getting the capital, but we'll have to see how the dice all fall. This goes into CIG's managing expectations and players understanding development and being responsible with their expectations. Yeah, Shady, I don't know. CIG managing expectations. CIG's job is to make money and make a product. Is it their job to manage our expectations? I'm not so sure about that. I'm speaking as myself. When I watch a trailer for a ship that comes out and they make it beautiful and they make it look good and it casts a vision for me of what I could be able to do in a game. Is that more on me or is it on them? Is it 50-50? I don't know. Okay, so since they gave up Squadron 42 years ago, I guess it's okay. Oh, no, they haven't given us Squadron 42 years ago. I agreed with you. I said I think that if it was only Squadron 42, it should have been out. I'm not taking anything away from their projections. They projected several years that they thought that they would have the game out and it would be in our hands, and it hasn't happened. That's why I'm kind of saying history may have to be the thing that finally tells whether it's worth it. I mean, let's say Squadron 42 comes out. I'm just randomly speaking because I want to get to the next episode. Let's say Squadron 42 comes out and it's amazing. When I say amazing, I mean amazing. I mean, like, people are ranting and raving. I'm not talking about subjectively. I'm saying even the industry mags are like, this game was a 9.5. It was a 9. I mean, everybody's excited about it. Will we still care about how we feel now? I'm curious. Will it go away? it's kind of like trauma, right? Like when you have a traumatic incident, after the incident is over, you say, I don't really remember what happened. It's fuzzy, Will it all be fuzzy, or will we still have, grit in our teeth that we're picking out with a toothpick while we're playing the game at the same time? Like, this game is great, but man, it sucks that I have to sit here and wait for this sucker until 12 years. I'm curious as to what you guys think, where we will be in our heads, where we'll be in our heads. If they're going to market the game to people, they should face the backlash. Yeah, that's a part of it, right? And we've talked about that we know that CIG knows that there's some things that they do that they know they're going to catch some heat for. But evidently the number crunchers or somebody tells them that, yeah, you may piss off this many people, but this is how many other people you're going to get, right? The problem is that at 1.5 decades, it can't possibly be anything less than ecstatically a game changing at this point. Yeah, they are raised expectations so damn high by the simple fact of the time taken. Yeah, and that's the danger, Kai, to be honest with you. The fact that when so much time has gone by, it does force it to live up to a certain standard, whether they're asking for that standard or not. The dollars don't mean anything. I mean, $600 million in the game process of game development is a lot of money for one game, not for two. For one game, it's a lot. For two, it's not. We haven't even gotten to the level of the areas of marketing and stuff for dollars that are spent on that, because marketing dollars usually exceed even development dollars. But yeah, you're right. It does create a fix for them that they maybe didn't ask for. And that said, if you say I took 12 years to make a game, 14 years to make a game, I'm talking about Squadron, I'm not talking about the Persistent Universe, you have raised, whether consciously or subconsciously, the expectations of a gaming community. That's for sure, because you can't be playing Donkey Kong, right? Okay, let's go ahead and go on to episode 11. Thanks, guys. Those are great thoughts you guys share. Very, very good thoughts, because I was wondering myself. Let's look at number 11.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those of you that don't know, that is where I take 10 questions from the Star Citizen subscribers and answer them as best I can. For you that don't know about the subscribers, they're the folks that pay additional money every month to be able to support the extra amount of community content we do, which involves things like this show or Wingman's Hangar, creating the Jump Point.
Got you, Josh. Thanks for the comment. And first time chat. Thanks for dropping it in for us. Thanks, man.
6 pages long, and
there are people who feel the same way.
50 pages full of crap details of behind the scenes, how we're making the game, and there's a bunch of other sort of some of the stuff that we do on the web, the stories, and more stuff that we've got planned is all made possible by subscribers. So thank you very much. Sitting next to me is David Haddock, our lead writer, and I thought I would have him along because sometimes it's nice to talk about something more than just the straight questions. Maybe go in a little aside, give you a little more insight into the game, and then sort of hit the questions. So. The first question I have on 10 for the Chairman is Idolo, who is saying, I was wondering, since our characters are now legal citizens of the Empire, will we be able to vote on issues that the Senate try to pass? So that's a good one, and so I thought that would be a good opportunity to have a little side conversation with David about sort of politics and kind of how we thought about how it would work, and then also how we thought it would affect the persistent universe. So, David, I was wondering, since our characters are now legal citizens of the Empire, will we be able to vote on the issues that the Senate tried to pass?
Well, I don't think you'd be able to vote directly on the bills, but we had talked about the idea that the characters that you're seeing sort of pop up in like the Congress Now news updates and stuff like that are the actual senators that are working that have been elected.
And the one thing I think I probably want to let everyone know, because I do see it sometimes where people think that like some of the fiction is filler on our site, and that's actually not, because I had a few people, I just want to know more about how the game's getting made, and that's cool because we want to tell you more about how the game's getting made, but we actually very deliberately are sort of spoon feeding out like the world and creating the universe with what we do with, we have an update on Tuesday, we have an update on Thursday, and we're actually sort of kind of using it as an in-fiction way of revealing things and ideas and concepts and tensions that we want to have in the universe, and also in some cases play mechanics. So we've had pieces where the show where we're talking about the trucker show or whatever,
right?
And we sort of talk about some of the mechanics, or we had someone talking about piracy, and so the idea of some of the pieces is to sort of kind of in fiction way highlight how we think some of the game mechanics are. So I would say that it's probably a good idea to read those, even if you feel like it's a lot of text.
Let me stop here for a second before he answers that, because I see Kai dropped in. Let me come down here where Kai is. Hey Kai, you there? Hopefully he's there.
Hello, hello.
Hey, what's up, buddy?
How you doing?
Good.
Yes. Let me mute the stream real quick. So
Okay.
I'm hearing everything.
Sure
twice.
thing.
Yeah. This is an interesting one. Can we vote for the senator, or can we vote for issues of the Senate? And I typed my response in there, which was the answer is no, because there is no Senate. It's a video game. Go outside and feel the sun on your face, you mental patient. Sometimes I love the people of whatever, but like this is a video game. Go out.
Yeah.
Find a nice girl or a boy who you think looks nice and smells nice, and kiss them and make babies and live your life. Have a job. Maybe get a little exercise.
Yeah.
Walk around. Feel the sun on your face. Like a video game is good, but like if a video game is a substitute for you, I can't even work up enough to give a shit about politics in the country that I live in, much less fake video. Like, what are you voting for? If Hulk Hogan or Andre the Giant is gonna win? Like, no, it's fake. Stop it. Stop.
Yeah.
Stop it. You need to check your medical levels. Like, you need to check the dosage of whatever they're giving you.
Let me counter that a little bit. Let me play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
I think this may be more about. Now, I don't know what this person's head is, because this person may be literally just too deep into the well. We had the elections, right? And when they had the elections, it was for who was going to be, it ended up being, excuse me, Addison got voted as the new person, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if this has more to do with, for the narrative team, when they put like those 4 or 5 candidates that was out there, each one of them had a backstory. Somebody believed in technology. Some people believed in allowing aliens to become a part of the UEE, things of that nature. I think that there's the feeling of, will we have impact on the world, or will this just be a world with all this lore behind it? But everything that's tied to lore has nothing to do with what I do until I step into the game every day. So what? It's the Messer regime. That has nothing to do with me blowing the guy up who's over here in this ship. You know what I mean? Or if I go into the Vandal system, something's going on with Xi'an. Maybe there's no connections for the player. I think that the reason why this is important, lore, and that the lore is interactive, is that as part of our gameplay, it enhances it in some form. Now, going to the level of choosing senators, that's a bit much, because this person doesn't know that senators represent every world in the game. You got to be able to do that for each world. That's not going to be practical, right? But I do like the fact that maybe whoever is in charge of the UEE, we have because mind it's only once every 10 years that you vote. So it's not like it's an annual thing,
So let me please provide a counterpoint.
Okay.
First off, since you decided to be devil's advocate, I'm going to point out that devil is evil and advocate is lawyer, which is evil. That's just redundant. So, all right. But Mr. Devil's Advocate, you're saying, like, will we have a chance through our player activities to impact the overall scope of the larger narrative of the verse? And my response would be, for the love of Christ, please, God, do not ever let that happen.
Okay.
I just shared with you a video today from our D&D gaming group for our Baldur's Gate group, how this guy is playing Baldur's Gate as a potato barbarian. All of his combat is affected through throwing potatoes using the barbarian bar brawler feat. What I'm explaining to you is you can reliably expect players to do the stupidest shit at every opportunity. Okay. If I'm playing a cool, interesting, well thought out game that this middle-aged white man Willy Wonka is selling me, I pray to God that the verse and the lore and all of the stuff is better thought out than
the players
we're gonna meme
with
with potato chips and blow everything up. If it turns out that the Vanduul all have potatoes because players were allowed to affect whatever, and our senator, our number one senator, will for some reason not shut up about whether he's pro or anti-Ukraine because the players had some ability to affect the story, I will shoot myself.
Well,
I want a well-crafted story. I want to be able to affect small things. I want to be able to affect. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me stop you. I'm going to say I 100% agree with you now that you put it in that context. And here's where my sadness comes in. This is where my sadness comes in. My sadness comes in that I'm from the generation of gamers where we wanted to be able to do things like that without the fear or the reality of what you saying happened. Because gamers' mentalities were in a different space. You know what I'm saying?
And you're going to get that.
If we had something cool come into a game, we wanted the coolness there. We didn't look for ways to circumvent it, to ruin it, to have a good laugh over it regardless to whether it hurt other players. You know what I'm saying? That was not my generation of gamers. You just brought me from being a dreamer to reality. And the reality, and I'm saying it, that's why I say that's the sadness for me, because I do have to agree with you because you've given it to me in a much more, Griff, what you're saying sounds very great and taking the high road, but you kind of know that usually nowadays people take the low road. And you're right. If that entered into it, then it does negatively. Unfortunately.
You're going to get what you want, Griff. You're going to get that dream of actual freedom, narrative freedom.
Yeah.
You're going to get it because what they're coming up with now with all of this chat GPT shit and the whatever, by the time Star Citizen 2 gets kickstarted, which Star Citizen 1 will come out in about 25 years. And then by the time the day after they release it, Star Citizen 2 Kickstarter will come out. And at that point, we will be running on AIs and stuff, and you'll be able to have a fully fledged universe where you'll have full freedom to do anything, and it will actually make sense. But the way that it stands now, like for example, Xenothreat. Xenothreat are the space clan. They are space races. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. And I love that. I love Nazis. I love the KKK. I love stuff in video games where, because I don't want to, as a Marine who was shipped all around the world to kill random brown people with dubious reasons that I think a lot of which came back to petrochemical dollars and whatever. I feel very conflicted about stuff like this. But you put me in a video game with Nazis or the KKK or the zombies, I can shoot them in the face all day and giggle without feeling the slightest bit of sadness. Because in my mind, and I'm not speaking for anybody else, the KKK and Nazis are not humans. They're subhuman. So like that's what the Xenothreat is. They're the uber bad guys. They're space races. And if you make players in 2023 with the meme kek like feelings or whatever, if you let the players actually really change the universe, you're going to end up with people being like, let's push Xenothreat, have them take over all of the UEC or, you know, and it's like, no, I don't want a video game where the racists win. Like, screw that.
Well, remember, I agree. And again, remember what I said earlier too. I said there's my generation of gaming, right? Don't get me wrong. There's always been people who love playing the bad guy, and that's cool. You know what I'm saying? I don't mind that the playing the bad guy thing. Sure. I don't mind the PvP, or I don't mind that. But what I have noticed is these, and I know we're getting sidebar from the show, guys. So I'm going to wrap this up on this. But I thank Kai for coming in and raising this as a point because it is crucial. Some of the steps that they're making, they may seem very minor, you know, in the beginning, but the long range issues that could come from them could be big, which is why I'm glad, like when I talked about this, when we vote the person who's over the UEE and once every 10 years, I'm glad that's not an annual thing. You know what I'm saying? It gives the writers space to plan things out. You know what I'm saying? And it also gives the game consistency so that whatever they write for story can be something that we as gamers, when we enter that world, we need that consistency. We don't need a lot of instability, especially if this instability is not done in a sane way. If the instability is being created by the madness of gamers who just for the sake of yucks and jokes decide to vote for something and get the majority of people to vote. Because as you mentioned, there's a lot of not passive, what's the word I'm looking for, when lethargic attitude
online.
No.
Yeah.
There's a lot of lethargic attitude toward voting. You know what I'm saying? And it's not until things get bad that all of a sudden the right people wake up and say, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? You know, so because you don't have that level to keep balance, so that even when the crazies do put crazy stuff out there, you don't have enough people on the other side who are going to be that active to make sure that the voting stays, that the game stays in a good space. You know what I'm saying? So, we could go on about this. I'm not going to belabor the point, but I think you guys get what we're saying. There can be, as nice as it sounds to have the gamers' involvement at a certain level. We even talked about this with development, Kai. There's only so much that the gamers' voices should be in there, because when gamers get in too far, you end up ruining the game. If you listen to the community too much, you end up ruining the game. And that's been historically the way it's been. There are a lot of games that have good relation with community. But when you start catering to all the whims of the gamers who don't know anything about game development, all they know is what they want in the game, ultimately it ends up being a desert in the long run. So, okay.
Can I point out one last thing before I go?
Sure.
So, I love you, Griff. You're a good man. You're a good person. I love Fast Cart. I love the Soul Citizens community. And I'll say this. I love Star Citizen as a concept. I love CIG. I love Chris Roberts, man. Yes. But I feel like there's a bit of a tendency, especially with stuff like this, where like you're showing, like he's talking about all this dreamer stuff and this, that, and the other. And people will say like, well, Elite Dangerous only has this, and Starfield only has this, and X4 only has this, but Star Citizen has this, and you list like 10,000 things. And I understand and appreciate where you're coming from, but if I could offer a counterpoint, it would be this. That guy, the little hamster-looking dude.
Wait. When did I say Star Citizen has this?
No. I mean, in general, when people talk about like, Soul Citizen show and like in general.
Okay.
And it's what I love about Star Citizen is that it's an ambitious project where they talk about all these possibilities, and it is full of possibility. But the fact of the matter is this is all theoretical. Until I actually see a thing, they don't get credit for any of it as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
If I'm saying, that little hamster-looking dude, that little weird Mormon, the review bra, who he does the sandwiches, like the new Wendy's chicken sandwich, the Burger King chicken sandwich.
Right.
If that guy is going around and he does a video and it's like, oh, let's do the best chicken sandwich. We got Popeyes, we got Wendy's, we got Chick-fil-A, we got Burger King, we got KFC. I feel like, if Starfield is Popeyes and ED is KFC and this one is this and this one is that, people are saying, but look, Star Citizen has a full, persistent universe and 100 systems, and you get to vote for the senator, and oh my God, this and oh my God, that. And my thing is, if I'm Review Bra and I'm rating everybody's chicken sandwich, I'm giving Star Citizen an incomplete. You don't get a score until I see a game. Your ideas of like, oh, we're gonna have this big ship that has medical modules and it has a freaking loop to find the Higgs boson, and it has this and it has that. It's like, oh, that's nice, but you're telling me a story right now. You could be pitching a TV show in an elevator, whatever. It's like, no, I need an actual, product. I'm not giving you credit for any of these ideas until I see them in there. What I will give you credit for is, where mining is right now, where salvage is right now, where the AI and bunker missions and whatever are right now. And that's not to say that I'm going to say to everybody, well, Star Citizen sucks because, bunker missions, they're not even really tied to rep yet. You can't do this, and this. No, but I'm not going to give you credit for a full-fledged system that you spin a yarn about on an interview 10 years ago, and I've seen none of it actually come in yet.
Did you hear why I said I was doing these shows?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I did, and I appreciate it.
Okay.
I do. I'm just pointing out, kind of tied to what you said earlier about, like, to what extent is like the vision, the expectations, and the reality? It's like we've got a whole lot of bucket A and bucket B, and we ain't got a whole lot of bucket C. Is all I'm saying.
I would disagree with you, and I'm going to stop there because half of which you mentioned is in the game that you said you haven't seen. The reality is this, and again, your point about judging the game in comparison, I agree 100% on. I do. I honestly do. I honestly agree with 100% on. And I've said this 3 or 4 times in the show today. Time will tell. I've been saying that, right? So I'm not judging this game. Even now, I don't sit here and say, like, I'm not one of those people who says, well, Star Citizen's way better than Starfield right now. No way am I saying that. Not by any means.
Okay.
But again, my purpose of doing this had to do with the fact that there's so many people who judge Star Citizen on where it is now. They get frustrated on where it is now because they don't know the history of what it's supposed to be. And if they understood why, like, for example, someone will say to me, they need a ship that does blah, 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 blah. They don't even know that ship was talked about before. Or they may say, how come my ship doesn't do such and such, such and such? Well, they don't know because it's planned for it. Now, they don't have it in their hands, obviously. And as consumers, I get it. We do kind of judge what, hey, this is what I got in my hands. That's all I got to go on. I get that. But I do want people to understand that if you look at what the things are that he's talked about, and if you can see what you have in your hand is now is maybe 50% of what they said, or 70%, or 30%, at least you can see the progression that it is happening, even when it was mentioned back in 2014. Because again, you and I both know, like the person who opened up the first question about on the last show was, can I fly my Idris, by itself, and he said at that time, I haven't decided yet, Now, if you've been around a length of time, you know that they've said, no, you're not going to, you could take it out and fly it, but you're not going to be able to really do anything. So I'm just saying my whole purpose of this is to get people to understand that this is a long process. It's a long time. That's why some things, just like you said, why there's some things that aren't there, why there's some things that are broken, why there are some things that have reached their goal. Death of a Spaceman was written 9 years ago. We just got it a little over a year ago. And in my evaluation, based on the original design docs for it, 90% of what they said was going to be in there is what it is now. 90%. It's not 100%, but it's 90%. So for me, it says, okay, I can look back to when they first put this vision about how when you died, what was going to happen in the game, that at least I can say, okay, oh, this is where this started. It took us, okay, I see where they are with it. Are they going to reach 100%? Maybe it'll stop at the 90 and that's it.
Oh, it'll never reach 100 because the part of the thing they said on the original vision was no clones. You're going to inherit shit with your, and it's like,
there you go.
I honestly think that the choice that they made to allow for the clones is a better choice in a game. I think it evolved due to customer feedback, let's say, in a good way.
And development. And development in general, right? As time goes by, you refine and you tweak and you proof of concept. Maybe this concept doesn't work. We got to tweak it a little bit to get it someplace else. Okay.
So the last question I'm going to ask you before I go is this.
Okay.
Star Citizen kickstarted on October 18th, 2012.
Mm-hmm.
At what point? A date. Not when this comes out. At what date do we say from October 18th, 2012? And I understand you're saying like, well, it took them time to put together this and that, but the Kickstarter, we people bought in on a product on October 18th, 2012. At what point do we say enough's enough? At this point, you need to have put up or shut up.
Okay, I'm going to answer your question, and hopefully this will be satisfactory because I have to state 2 things.
Okay.
Let's say Squadron 42.
Sure.
Reality. Okay, and let me tell you how I get to this conclusion. I'll make it real quick, gang. My conclusion is that in the date you gave, October 7, 2012, there were 7 people working for CIG when it kicked off the company in December of that year. So let's just say that January of 2014 is when the company literally starts doing stuff with 7 people. Let's say that over the next 2 to 3 years after that, let's say roughly we get to about 200 and some odd staff, maybe by 2015, 2016. That's where we are there. As far as I'm concerned, 2015, the first year that they thought they were going to get Squadron 42 out, that's when they got rid of all the third-party contractors and companies like Elphonic and all of them, and they consolidated everything under their own umbrella. That's start date for me, not 2012. That's start date for me. The first 3 years of building the company, that's it. Hard development starts at that point. We get to 2016 through. So for me, I'm only 8 years in, where other people are in 10 years, 13 years. That's my timetable. Now, if I say 8 years, and I say that the maximum for me is 10 years, because that's the average between 12 and 7 years, roughly, or 8 years for a AAA game, then it says to me that next year, fourth quarter, there needs to be a solid something of Squadron 42. I'm talking about like released fourth quarter 2024. For me, that puts them at a 9-year period of development for Squadron. Now, for Star Citizen, when I got in that in 2013, based on me playing Eve and Galaxies and other games like that, my general feeling was, because I like the MMO, like some people like the single player better, I was way more into the persistent universe side of it.
Oh, hell yeah.
I always had the attitude of at least 10 years or more, and it's going to do like Eve. It's just going to go on and on and on and on and on. So I've never had a cutoff. Now, if you ask me, is there a beta, like a stability date, like where it's going to be like you can go into PTU live and it's stable and no problems, and now they're just adding things? I'm going to say the same date. And I know that's really pushing it, but I'm going to say that because in the original documents that they gave to the community, they said that when people play Star Citizen, they want you to be able to launch into the persistent universe afterward. Not a buggy, unstable place, but a place that literally, when you're finished with Squadron, now you can go in the universe and continue on. And that's hanging there. There's a clock on that too, as far as I'm concerned. Even though we know the development, building the planets and building out the galaxy can go on for years and years. But I'm talking about a stable, persistent universe needs to exist sometime immediately after Squadron 42 comes out. If it's not by that time, so we're talking about a year and a half, maybe at the most. For me, at that point, I'd be very frustrated. Very frustrated.
So you're saying
frustrated.
Between now and January 1, 2025 is make or break for Star Citizen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm saying for Squadron, to me, it's got to come out in 2024. That's me a year from now.
I get you.
That's
all right,
me.
brother.
Okay.
Be well.
Thanks for dropping in, bro. Okay, y'all.
Later.
All right. You guys know Kai always comes in and gives me good conversations on my Saturday show, or not my Saturday show, on our Saturday show. But hopefully you guys got it. Let's see. Isn't this new standard for 10 years in 2027? Yeah, Admiral. I mean, for AAA stuff, the games go long now. Sometimes people think they're shorter, but they don't realize when games really actually started. So that's part of it. There we go. All right. Let's see who I think we already did this. The backers voted. The Imperator. Yeah, we did the Imperator, but they're asking about the Senate. The Senate is made up of all the different folks of the habitable worlds, and that gets to be a whole nother. All right, let's continue on, gang. What's my time like? Okay, I'm probably only going to get through 2 episodes of this instead of 3 today, but we'll see.
But yeah, I mean, so, one of the things we talked about was having elections, basically. So, the senators that you're reading about now have to run for office again, and so we basically would write up these sort of characters for them to run up against, do ads, do all sorts of like what is their belief platform and all this sort of thing, and then let the players vote for who they want to have in office, which would be a kind of a fun way for the community to throw us a curveball, because if we write up a character who you're sort of like internally like, well, he's probably going to become a despot if they elect him, and then you guys elect him, we have to kind of accommodate.
Well, sort of live storytelling, right? So kind of one of our goals is that once the game is live, we want a lot of the player actions to sort of shape how it goes. So we've got an idea of we've got a general sort of big overall plan, which is sort of inspired by the decline and fall of the Roman Empire, but there's a lot of sort of directions that can go inside that large framework that we want to have sort of player fed. So this is a great example where you have the citizens vote on the senator, and then if they're voting for a particularly aggressive militaristic senator, then
or
perhaps
isolationist or something.
It would affect kind of how we would start to update the content after that. And there's other things that we're going to do. So if there's battles involving 2 big groups of players, I mean, we're actually essentially going to have think of it as a game master that plays a reporter role. So we're actually going to have some people that jobs are, when the full persistent universe going, is to sort of go around and just be watching and recording stuff, and then we basically collect news from around the universe. And then if you're going into a bar, and we'll be playing, like, off in the Vegas sector, there was the Terran Confederation got into a brawl with one of our other organizations, the Goon Rathi or whatever, and there's a report. So it's like, so hopefully if you're playing the game, you'll sort of you'll feel like your actions actually start to become part of the lore. I mean, it's all part of that whole idea of Death of the Spaceman, where we've got like you've actually got a timeline. You've got our spaceships themselves get wear and tear. The characters get wear and tear. Time passes. Things change in politics. Players affect it. So that's all part of the spirit of how we think the universe itself will be actually a really fun, cool place. And we're kind of excited to. I mean, this is a ways away because obviously we've got a lot of other things to do before we get to this final state where the full game's all fully done. But and I think we're pretty excited about getting to that point and just seeing what happens, because already just what we see evolve on the forums, on the web, is more than we would have guessed, and the alliances and the groups and all the rest of the stuff.
Well, it'll be kind of fun because it sort of blurs the line as to what is generated by us. To the average player, it'll be difficult to discern what was generated by the CIG and what's generated by other players. So it just becomes.
Yeah, and I think it would be great. I mean, it's almost like we will be editorial,
right,
for the player-generated content, which in some ways is also what we're doing with, like, the next great Starship. I mean, that is going to be user-generated content that is editorialized. So we say we think this is good enough to get in the game. We help guide it. I think that will be hopefully a lot of fun when we get to do that. But until then, we still got a bunch of other things to do. All right, so that's our sort of big first aside question. So now onto the more quick-fire.
Okay, let me stop to say something, Kai. Yeah, Kai, you're right. I don't want to say, like, that's what I'm trying to say. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. Company started in 2012. Company was definitely growing and building over the next couple of years. That's what I meant. That's why I said when they got around 250 staff in 2014, 2015, that's when things really start to take off with development in the game. So I'm not saying that they got money in 2012 and didn't do anything with it over the next 2 to 3 years. They built studios. They started hiring on employees. They brought in concept artists. They started doing research, working on tools, tech, all that other stuff, building network, all that stuff. There was the issues working on CryEngine, converting it. Plenty of work was going on. But I'm talking about when I feel that they started getting their feet on the ground, that it was after they consolidated, particularly bringing in all of the side companies. I think the only one they kept was the company in Montreal. Otherwise, everything else kind of came under their umbrella. That's what I was referring to. Okay. So please don't think that I wasn't saying they haven't been working the last 10 years. Okay. I was not saying that. Okay. Hopefully I clarified that. Don't bring the lawyers in. Don't bring the lawyers. Turbulent. Thank you. Don't bring the lawyers in. Okay. Here we go.
Answers. Checkmate asks, Chris, if you weren't overseeing the whole Star Citizen project, what role would you like to have? Or where do you think your talents would most closely lie on the team? Well, I guess, that generally falls in programming or design. I mean, I kind of, in some ways, think programming is design. For me, the best game creators, game programmers have the programming background, because you sort of, essentially programming is sort of designing a system and how it's all going to work, and you sort of set the parameters. I would guess, I don't know, lead programmer or lead designer would be mostly what it is. I mean, when I started in the industry, there was, projects weren't massive like, say, Star Citizen is, so I was like a band of one. I did the programming, I did the design, I did the graphics, I did the sound, I did the writing. So now, obviously, on something that's massive, you can't do all that. So of the stuff I'm doing more, I tend to do some hands-on coding because I'm kind of enjoying the design of some systems, and then just general overview of design, and art direction is fun too. I kind of like to do that, but I guess that's me overseeing the whole project, so that's kind of not really answering the question properly. All right.
It is interesting that Chris still does do coding. I think it was last year's show when he and Sandy came on, and he had said that he had been back doing some coding in the game, which is interesting. He still has a passion and a heart for getting down there at the grassroots level and doing stuff in this game, which I think is still kind of cool. CEO, but still finds time. If I guess that's something cool for him that he could be doing worse. I guess looking over somebody's shoulder, but at least he's still doing some type of coding work.
Next question comes from Rear Admiral Murray, who asks, after the game is released, over time, as server and connection technology improves, will we potentially see larger but fewer PvP instances? So more players per instance? So yeah, the simple answer on that is yes. I mean, there isn't any like structural design in terms of how we're coding it. Like, like if it was 8-bit, you couldn't get over 256 players in an area. It's not built that way at all. It's really just going to be bandwidth throttled and performance throttled. So as those limits go away, we probably will be able to scale up more people in any particular area. But it's hard to say, because with the rate of changing technology and everything, who knows, although bandwidth doesn't seem to move quite as fast as everything else. All right, next question.
It will be interesting to see what our caps will be, what we will go up to for how many people in areas. We know that right now we've got 110 people that are playing together in a server. We know that they've tested for numbers higher than that. I'm hoping that by the time we go to the next system, that we're somewhere between, well, I'm not going to even say that. I'm hoping that the next population numbers will be somewhere between 250 to 500. That's what I'm hoping that they'll go to. It may not be that high. But for the world to feel a little bit more populated, if it was another system, I think they need to double the numbers at least. And they definitely need to get the AI tech going so that the world feels more populated. This patch in 2.0 or 3.20, if you guys have been in there, it feels very much alive when you get a good server. The NPCs are doing more activities and things and whatnot, which is kind of cool, but would definitely love to see their interactions and things starting to step up, talking to them, things of that nature, which I think would be kind of nice.
Comes from Spajak, I think. Sorry if I mispronounced it. I noticed that you are number 5 in the UEE citizen records. Who are numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4? Well, I didn't actually know who these were, so I went and asked our web team, and it actually turns out I'm actually number 4 in the UEE citizen records, not number 5. Number 1 is the RSI Prime basic admin account. Number 2 is the old website's admin account. Number 3 is Ben Lesnick, who is in front of me, and then I am number 4. But since I don't know, Mr. Star Citizen, the web team has graciously agreed to or offered to make me number 1, which I think is suiting. So
that's
from now on, I will be known as number 1.
That's funny.
Okay.
I would just like to be the CEO and find out that you're like the 4th person in line. It's pretty funny.
Okay, next question from Uncle Mo. Can you tell us more about your goals for the shooter portion of Star Citizen? Will it be an awesome first-person shooter or some sort of third-person tab-targeting style shooter? Will it focus on PvE or PvP or both? Well, I'm all about awesome first-person shooters, so it's not likely to be third-person tab-style targeting shooter. Haven't decided whether you'll be able to sort of pop out to see yourself in third person or not, because sometimes the character's really cool to look at. But in general, it's designed as a first-person game. Crisis is a first-person game. That's the engine that we're built on. And the team that's working on the first-person side of the game, his background is all in like first-person shooters and really inspired by sort of the Unreal tournaments and all that kind of stuff. Although we're not going to be sort of quick and arcadey the same way that say some of the old-style Unreal Tournament or Quake style shooters are because of our death mechanics. So we've got it's I would say that our first-person combat is sort of slightly more realistic and more tactical, and there's more at stake. And we're going to be announcing and sharing more about that probably in, I wouldn't say in the next month or so, but after the dogfight, we're going to start to share that. And one of the additions onto the dogfighting will be sort of the boarding addition onto it. So we're going to get dogfighting V1 will be sort of the single-seater ships. Dogfighting V2 will be more the multi-crewed ships, and then we'll move on to sort of boarding, and then they'll all sort of get tied together, which will be kind of cool. Okay, so Camiel asks, will it be possible to remote operate a ship? If I have 2 transports, I want to take both on a mission by myself, will it be possible to connect these two, e.g. Starfarer's belly against belly? I would say not really. I don't think we have any plans for that. You certainly will be able to hire either an NPC or another player to fly your second ship for you, with the risks that you have with that, i.e. are they good, are they not good, all the rest of stuff, but you certainly can hire, like I said, NPCs and other players to fly your other ships. Euro Warrior asks,
so, we already know that this game is still very much, even though it's a weird balance of trying to make sure that people can play this game by themselves solo and feel like they've accomplished things and do things, but at the same time create it within even though CIG says it's not an MMO per se, but there is MMO aspects to it where you're playing with other players to assist cooperative play and stuff like that, not only just competitive, but cooperative. So, I'm glad that they do make it that way. I don't think people should be able to remotely control their cargo haulers to follow them when they're going out mining or something like that. I don't think they should be able to do that. But they give you means of still being able to carry cargo while you're mining too, so you're not left out and say, well, I can't move my stuff back and forth, which is cool.
will there be an engineering look for our ships? So we can walk around a selected ship in the hangar and see through the ship to see all the various systems. So we actually had a meeting earlier today where we were talking about sort of mobiGlas and what it can do, and so we're talking about a unified system that will be from mobiGlas potentially into your ship's sort of heads-up display, and even if you have a helmet on, into your helmet-mounted display. The mobiGlas will actually have a mode where like you can essentially do what the holotable does, but on your mobiGlas. And then there's some other engineering kind of stuff where you can manage systems, and we were also talking about having that happen on your mobiGlas, so you can sort of pull up the different systems you have on your ship and set them for different power ratings and all that kind of stuff. And I would think that the way we're doing the mobiGlas is it's sort of got an augmented reality, so you would like essentially pass the mobiGlas over your ship, and then like it highlights with like a hollow outline around over the elements that you're thinking about. So that would essentially be how you would sort of see the ship systems. So it'll be pretty cool.
That's interesting to see if they'll do that still. The mobiGlas kind of works like a smart watch or whatever, or phone, where it's got apps and stuff, and you can have different apps on it and whatnot. But I'm curious to see about him doing the augmented reality side of it. We did see them do something that looked like it was augmented reality before, but we'll see, if that's the way it pops out later for working in the engineering area.
So there you go. Next question comes from Krell, who asks, will there be a reason to ever fly at less than max velocity, i.e. cruising speed, say 80% of maximum, using far less fuel or less wear on components? Will wear and upkeep be modeled, or some other reason not to always go as fast as the ship will fly? So yes, there will definitely be a reason to go less than max velocity. First off, if you're in a dogfight, you will be able to turn much tighter at a slower speed, I should say, at a lower relative velocity to whoever you're dogfighting with or whatever sort of celestial object you're around, because you'll be able to turn a much tighter turn, because you'll be able to sustain, you tighter turn because your G's you're going to be G limited, right? So your flight control system will essentially keep you inside the limits of what your body can take. And if you're going very fast and you try to pull a tight turn over a very short period of time, you'll experience a huge amount of G's and you'll black out. And we're modeling G-lock and all that kind of stuff. So that will be a reason not to be flying at max velocity. Other reasons would be use of fuel, because when you're at max velocity, it's just like a car, you're not going to be as efficient. And we have wear on components, and we do model wear and upkeep on the model. So you'll actually see your ship get grime and dirt and age over time you play it. You can take it into a planet and get it sort of scrubbed up, but it'll never be pristine showroom quality until you buy a new one. So it'll be like a real car, so which would be kind of cool, I think. All right, so next question comes from Dreeper, who says, how satisfied are you with CryEngine so far? Are there any things you fear you cannot realize with it that would have been in your dream version of Star Citizen? So yeah, and I'm very satisfied with CryEngine so far. It's a very powerful engine. I think it's one of, if not the best looking engine out there for the kind of look and style that I want, which is a sort of more photorealistic look. I mean, obviously we have some challenges because we're using the engine for something that it wasn't primarily built for, i.e. we're having big space, open, like space. We got vehicles that fly at fast speeds over long distances, whereas CryEngine was built for sort of first-person on-foot combat. So generally their play areas are sort of 4 kilometers by 4 kilometers or 8 kilometers by 8 kilometers. Ours will be millions of kilometers across. So we have to do modifications to the engine to enable that. But most of the things I think that I want to get done are getting done. I mean, there is some longer term stuff I want to do where we're going to go seamlessly from, say, space down to the planet. This is very long term, not the initial release. But we're pretty sure that we'll be able to get that worked into the framework of the engine. I mean, my guess is that down the road, as we're up and running, as we continue to add more content, the engine itself will be so heavily modified that it won't really resemble the base engine it came from, because we've got such specific needs for what we're doing. But yeah, it's a great engine. We're really happy. We really love the look of it. Last question.
Okay. Talking about CryEngine, there's always been this question about whether or not CryEngine was the way to go. Evidently, Chris felt fairly confident about it. He talks about the limitations of the engine right up front and says they have to do modifications. And some of you guys may remember that CIG actually did end up hiring quite a few of the engineers that worked at CryEngine that became working at RSI, which was probably a good move to help them work with the architecture of CryEngine. And you guys know the CryEngine has morphed beyond that to now what is it's a lumberyard under Amazon. Interesting that they went that way. There are always people who say that maybe they should start with their own engine, but evidently they seemed like they knew what they were doing when they made that decision. Okay.
Comes from Assyrium, who asks, how will the chat system in the game work? When we stumble across another player in space, how will we communicate with him? Will it be via voice chat, text chat, or both? So we're going to still flesh that out. I mean, our goal is to try and have voice over IP. We're also going to try and have this technology which we've got up and running. So we'll probably have it called Live Driver, where you can talk, and the webcam on your computer is looking at your face, and it transcribes it to your avatar. So your avatar's mouth moves sort of along lines with what your mouth's moving, but you're hearing your voice. And we'll probably do some level of voice processing on it, because there's a lot of real-time filters that we can apply in the sound system that we're going to use. So it'll be cool. It'll be sort of like I'll be talking to you as a pilot. We're going to let people hail other people, and then if someone accepts the hail, then you can talk to them, because you also don't want people just always abusing you and spamming you. If you don't want to use voice chat, you could also be using sort of text chat in a box. So you'll hopefully have both those options. So voice over IP is definitely part of our plan. So far, we're planning to have it in. Probably won't be in for Dogfighting V1. I'm not even sure whether we'll have text chat in for Dogfight V1, but as the year progresses, this stuff will get in there. But I'm sure you will find ways to harass each other without having it built into the system, probably having Skype open at the same time or whatever. Okay, so that was the last question. Thank you for joining me. As always, thank you to the subscribers for making all this possible. Thank you for Dave Haddock for joining me and helping sort of elaborate on some of the stuff that we're trying to do in the sort of living universe. And thank you to all the backers out there for helping us make basically this dream game for us all to play, and hopefully for you guys to play. So see you next week. Bye.
All right. Yeah, but dude, to your point about the dynamic events, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that they're doing that sometimes, again, this is why I said a lot of times players base the game on where it is now, and they think that maybe this is all there is, or this is the most that it is. But quite often there are things that are put into the game that are there for a proof of concept to see what we do with it once we get it in our hands. Of course, how their systems run off of it, their networks and all that stuff. And then usually it's just a piece of the bigger puzzle that's out there. So I would think, yes, anything that they're doing is always going to be about how do they perfect some other things that are coming down the line, especially in the area of dynamic events versus static things that we know they're coming up. Even the dynamic events now are not truly dynamic. They're just kind of events that they kick off internally. But the time is coming where those events will be kicked off because of our actions. So it's a good point. All right, let's see if we can get this last one in. It's only 14 minutes long, and we will hit this one. Yeah, we should be able to knock this out pretty quick. Let's try it. Episode 12. Episode 12. This is from March 2014.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of 10 for the Chairman. For those of you that don't know about it or haven't watched it yet, this is where I take 10 questions from subscribers and answer them to the best of my ability. So subscribers are the the part of the community that are kicking in extra money every month to enable us to do extra community content. So this show, Wingman's Hangar, also a bunch of the other stuff we do, Jump Point, which trickles down to the general community base. So thank you very much, subscribers, for allowing us to do a lot of this extra sort of video content and communication. So let me just get straight to it here with my questions. So the very first question comes from Stoge. When hiring NPCs to crew our ships, what degree of variation will there be between different NPCs? Will I be able to go out and find a skilled ship gunner for my freelancer? And if someone who's a great pilot but not a great gunner, if I pay him to sit in the gunner seat for a while, will he slowly get better at it? So there will definitely be variations between NPCs. We'll have some level of sort of skill for the NPCs, and probably there will be some progression for the NPCs. So if they fight a lot of battles and they manage to be on the winning end of them, then they will actually get better. And the cost of like hiring the crew will be dependent on their sort of skill level. So you could go for a cheaper crew, but they may not be as good as a sort of veteran or elite crew. So on that level, the NPCs will have some level of sort of typical RPG progression, although obviously as a player, you yourself don't. So I guess the question is, if he does sit in the gunner seat for a while and manage to hit a few things and you do all right, then he will slowly get better at it. Okay, next question.
We know that Tony Z, when he talked about the whole thing with Quanta and Quanta, that there would be some type of learning that will take place with them where they will get better. We know that they talked about there would be things like them having fatigue, being tired, being hungry, wanting to eat, and of course being paid. So we're going to have to see where that goes, right? The Quanta speech was about 2 years ago, I think, 3 years ago. And so hopefully maybe at CitizenCon this year, we'll hear something about it. They've gotten it where they want it to be. But we do know what they want. They do want NPCs to have, you want a feeling of NPCs having some real good interaction and some personality, for lack of a better term. But again, Chris mentions that he wants them to players to always have the edge, be a little bit better, to have players doing things in your ship more than an NPC doing something.
Comes from CC Corp, who asks, will there be any benefits for ejecting out of your ship before it explodes? Like less of a financial loss, or will you be unable to abandon ship as said ship is burning down?
Drake!
So yes, there will be benefits for ejecting out of a ship just before it explodes. Not all ships will have that capacity or capability. The Hornet has it, the 300i will have it, but something like the Aurora, which is much more of a basic ship, doesn't have the ability to eject.
300i does not have the ability to eject, Chris. I'm upset about that. It's an Origin ship. It should have every amenity, and it does not have it.
Some of the bigger ships will have escape pods that if you get to before the ship goes out,
I don't think it does.
Get out before
does it?
Ship goes up in a big fiery explosion. And the benefit of ejecting rather than going up in explosion is that it sort of saves a life, so to speak. So if you refer back to my Death of a Spaceman write-up that I did a while ago, the concept in Star Citizen is that there's a progression in your character's life. So it's you don't always respawn at the same level of health, and as time goes on, your body sort of takes wear and tear, and so every time you say get killed in a dogfight, you'll end up waking up in a med bay. So think of it like Luke Skywalker and The Empire Strikes Back. And maybe you've got a bit of a prosthetic arm, or you've got a scar here, and then after that happens so many times, your body just can't get sort of built back up or revived, and that character will pass away, and all your possessions and family name or whatever you want will pass on to your sort of designated successor. The benefit of ejecting is that you sort of get to try and preserve a life. Which is something you probably would want to do, and we may or may not have some level of maybe your medical bills are less because you don't have to get fixed up as much. I guess it depends whether we have national health in our world, but we haven't made a decision on that particular aspect. But definitely you would want to eject before your ship blows up if you possibly can, or have a ship that will give you that, because it will give you an edge. And by the way, on the Aurora, you also, if it's about ready to go, you just would have to get out of your seat and go out the airlock manually versus hitting an ejection button. Okay, next question.
Let me go back to that, because I know earlier I was talking about Death of a Spaceman, and I said I felt like they were about 90% there. And the 10% that I was referring to, actually the 5%, because it's not 10%. The 5% I was referring to is the part where they start bringing on that you only get so many times to come back. Right now, you can come back. You come back 100%. But this part that Chris is talking about now is that next part that I haven't seen yet. Whether, once we die, we come back the next time. Maybe I even come back with everything. It's not that I lost a hand or an arm, but now I'm coming back at 80% of what I was. There's a decline that starts, as they mentioned. The next time you come back, you're down to 60% of what you were, because it gets to a point where you can no longer be regenerated. You can't come back, and now it has to go on to a new character. So that's the next part that I'm looking forward to, is the wear and tear dynamic of us physically when it comes to the Death of the Spaceman thing.
Question comes from Theus, who says, I was wondering if there were any plans to let us design our own costumes for our characters in a manner similar to how we can design our own ships to be considered for implementation in the game. So, well, definitely on the modding side, I think we'll let people to be designing their own costumes for their characters. We're definitely going to have a high level of customization in terms of outfits and stuff that you can do for your character in the game. So I guess those two things together will sort of be blended. I mean, I think if we were going to let someone have their own costume in the game itself, in the persistent universe, we would have to moderate it just to make sure that it sort of abided by the quality standards and the technical standards that we would need, which is kind of why we're doing like the next great starship, because we're having some teams build it, but it's to the standards that would fit in the game, and they would go from there. Okay, next question.
That's a good question about clothing, whether or not people can be able to make their own clothing. And he says that they have to make sure they monitor that so people don't come up with crazy stuff. Again, I always go back to Galaxies. In Galaxies, there were people who literally, that's all they did. They made clothes, they made uniforms for other orgs and people like that. One thing I do like that CIG is trying to do is obviously provide a lot of different level of clothing and costumes. Nowhere enough, as far as I'm concerned. We're not anywhere near the amount we need, but they are trying to build them around, clothing at Microtech looks a certain way, clothing at Hurston looks a certain way, clothing at Orison looks a certain way. So I'm hoping that they continue to do that. It would be nice that eventually, as crafting comes into the game, there would be so cool if you could get the general pattern or design for something, and if people wanted to be able to colorize it however they wanted to, that's fine. I don't know what level of embellishment it can go to, but if you wanted to have something that was a certain color, something like that, to me, I think that's a cool idea. They do have a variety of colors of items that they produce now. They usually don't produce just one color for one item, but we'll have to see if they give us that level of capability. And even if they do, that's so far down the road. But it would be nice for a lot of people, I'm sure, who are into doing that type of stuff.
Question comes from Viperion, who asks, how do you and CIG define alpha testing? Most of us have alpha access.
Here we go.
And most of us seem to be pretty unclear about what that actually means. Does CIG see us as primarily stress testers of mostly finished assets, or are we going to be actually testing the unfinished version of the game and bug hunting? You'll definitely be testing the unfinished version of the game, because we're sort of releasing the game in these modules that are only part of the functionality of the final game. So, the dogfight module's coming up. Before that, we had the hangar module, and we'll have some other ones like for the first-person combat or on the planet side. And so the primary point of having the community play it is for twofold. One, for people to sort of play it, and we get a sense of like feedback in terms of, yes, this is working, no, this is not working, these are the things we would like to tweak. So it's like a super massive focus group. And then there's stress testing, sort of bug testing. So we have our own dedicated group of testers, but of course, on a game that this big without this many different things you can do, it's impossible, even if we had a testing department of 200 people, to really cover it deep. Now, luckily, we have a testing department of 200,000 people at the moment. That obviously makes a big difference, because you sort of just, the amount of people banging away at it means that we'll probably flush out most of the problems or most of the bugs and most of the issues at a much earlier stage than you normally do in game development. So normally in game development, it only really goes super wide once the game's released, and then it's already out there, and then you start to see some things that you didn't even see in your own testing. So hopefully we'll be flushing that much earlier in our process, which is sort of why we have the whole early module and the whole alpha testing. So I would say that it's a combination of sort of feedback and stress testing and figuring out, sort of finding maybe some bugs we haven't seen. Now, that doesn't mean that like once someone finds a bug in the community that they write up a full bug report or anything like that, because that's probably not that practical with that many people. But what it does mean is that it's sort of a good place to sort of find problems, and then we on the development side can sort of put our dedicated engineers and our internal test staff going, okay, well that's a bug we need to fix. We didn't see that before, and so it just gives us a great head start. And we'll probably build in some sort of automated sort of bug report tool at some point. It won't be on the dogfighting V1, but down the road it will. Okay, next question.
The one thing that I hate that Chris did not answer, and I'm actually going to write to CIG on this. I don't really remember, and maybe some of you all do remember. I don't remember CIG ever explaining what pre-alpha, alpha, and beta are for them. I'm being real specific about saying for them because all the stuff I've read about development and tried to learn more about it, it seems that those terms are generic terms, and every company that uses them has their own state of what that means. Now, in general, alpha means that something is not feature complete, and it's where there's a lot of testing concepts and ideas, testing technology. A lot of things are being invented. It's very rough stage is what alpha is supposed to be. As to beta is when features are locked. In other words, everything that's supposed to be in the game that they've thought of at that moment is there. And now it's being finalized and tested, polished, all that type of stuff. Those are the two general statements. But there are plenty of documents out there that say that those can also be a little more less and less the other way. And I would love for CIG to do a show to explain when they're in these stages, what's going on specifically, so that people don't think that the game is in another state other than what it is. I don't think we're in pre-alpha anymore. I think we're in alpha. I think that's where they are. But what is the maximum of alpha? When does it start to become, we're definitely not feature complete. We don't have features locked in. So we're still in the alpha stage. But what does that mean? What's the expectation when you come into a game that says it's an alpha? Especially, right, Admiral, when we say playable now. Maybe what they're saying is this alpha is playable now. This broken game is playable. And so, I would love for CIG to give us the parameters for that.
So I'm going to say playable now.
Playable now. Yeah. But again, it says alpha. It never says playable now without saying early access alpha. They're always together. And
dude, I had your Discord up, and it was like join Discord. And then when you said that, I was like, bang, that's my in.
Yeah. I mean, again, people distinguish those as two separate statements. And if CIG is saying we're taking those two statements and putting them together, what does that mean for the player? What does it mean for the player? Because playable now is easily understood, but is alpha easily understood? No, I don't think it is.
Well, it's not, because people even think, there are some people that think that the name of this game is Star Citizen Alpha.
Well, I haven't heard anybody say that. But
oh, really? I remember I remember someone telling me that. I think it was Fastcart or somebody, and I was like, really?
He said that
and I was like, yeah.
Think that. He said people could think that, but I've never heard anybody call it Star Citizen Alpha.
I'll have to look it up. I will look it up and get back to you, because I'll do some research for you, sir.
Yeah.
But I just think they need to kind of. I
want them to talk about what that means for their company, not in general, because we can easily just Google and find the general definitions. I want to know for them, and Kai just mentioned it. Beta usually means feature complete. You've left alpha, you're feature complete. And feature complete usually only means all the stuff that we know we want to do at this time is there. We're not going to add anything else right now. We're going to consider this. After this, we're going to go to what we call release. Now, we can always add stuff later. We can always do other things. But the general vision of the game is encompassed. So let's just say for Star Citizen, if they said we have 8 careers and they outline those 8 careers, when those 8 careers are in, they can go to beta. And at that point, they can do more testing even. They can even, but we're not going to make more features to go into the game right now because now we're pushing toward release. But alpha is the one that is very, weird.
Who said we're pushing towards release?
No, I'm saying like for Squadron, for example. I'm just using it. I'm just speaking in general. I'm just saying you are pushing for release. Chris says there won't be a time when the game is finished. That's what he said. He says it will not be finished, but it will be released. There will be a beta. There will be a place where stability is there. The features that he wants in the game are there. That's going to be beta. And then we're going to be testing beta at that point. And then at that
PU, yeah. Yeah, I can see that for the PU.
No, not live. No, I'm talking about live. Let me give you an example. Eve is this way. Eve does this exact same thing. Eve comes out, and Eve is constantly evolved. When I was playing Eve 12 years, I played it, I was in the 7th year, I forget. I played it for 7 years, and I was in there like the 3rd or 4th year, whatever. Eve was released, and yet it was broken as all get out. I mean, it was broken. I talk about Star Wars Galaxies. Galaxies was broken like crazy, and it was fully released. It wasn't even in beta. It was freaking released, and there was so much of the game. They had 33 careers, and probably 30 of them had something broken in them when the game was released, and it was an MMO. So
I don't think I think CR is such a perfectionist that he won't let it go like that. And you know what? He has plenty of time with Squadron 42 and its sequels, because people always forget about the sequels. And I don't know. I really doubt they're gonna push the first Squadron 42 and then just say, hey, we're gonna go straight to the PU now. And then the next 5-10 years.
You can say that if you want to. I'm just telling you what they said. That's what they said. I didn't make that up.
What, they're going to do the PU after the first game?
No, Chris Roberts said, go back and look at this Kickstarter. Watch the video. We even did a video on it. We even did one of the 10 for Chairman. He said that the idea is that when people come out of Squadron 42, that they could now go into the persistent universe.
But which are you talking about, the game? Like Squadron 42, what, the first game or all three?
Yes. No, first game. There's no guarantee of 3 games.
What do you mean there's no guarantee of 3 games?
There's nothing that says that they're going to do 3 games in a row. They've talked about it. The only thing that they are locked into doing is Squadron 42. That's it. If they don't want to do a chapter 2 and 3, there is no legal obligation for them to do that. None. You show me where it says that they have to do it. Nothing. That's what he would like to do. That's what he would like to do. He says there are 3 chapters to this story. He would like to do it.
I kind of think they have most of it done. They just have to finalize.
That's your thinking. That's your thinking. Let's talk about what you know. What do we know?
I just don't see Gimli, who's like 95 years old, going to come back and doing
those characters. Those characters don't have to exist. Maybe they'll die in this game. We don't know what's going to happen with them.
They're just killing off characters already. See, I knew it.
I'm just saying. You have to go with what you know and what you have. This is the part that, again, visions, dreams, reality. The reality is we know there's a Squadron 42. We know that there is a persistent universe, and that's all they're legally obligated to deliver. He would like to continue the saga with a chapter 2. He would like to continue the chapter 3. I'm sure they've gotten the stories written. I'm sure they've cut video for it. Does that mean that the games have to release? No, it doesn't. They don't have to release. What happens if Squadron's a flop? Let's talk reality. What happens if Squadron does not let's say it does not receive the attention and gamers are enthusiastic as we are, or even as Chris is? Is he obligated to make a 3rd one? Is it going to be riskier to him and his investors to say, do we put money into this thing because the first one didn't achieve what we thought it was going to? There's a business side to this that they've got to wait and see. I hope that they will.
I will give you that.
Yeah, I think that they will. Don't get me wrong, Admiral. I think that they will. I think if the game is moderate, they'll do a second, because we've seen other games that don't do well, they'll put out a second one later on, and maybe the second one blows up, right? Doesn't have to be a number one thing for them to produce a second story. But what I am saying is that we just don't know. We just don't know. So we'll see what happens. But back to the alpha piece that you and I were talking about, what does alpha mean to CIG? Now, what does it mean to Bethesda? What does it mean to EA? What does alpha mean, so that our expectations of when we're trying to look and see where things are with the pieces of the puzzle they get, we can start to feel like, well, man, like, for example, remember there was a letter that came out in Squadron about Squadron couple weeks ago, and they said that their team was now moving to beta. Well, some people got all freaked out about that because they saw the word beta and they thought that, oh, Squadron 42 is going to go into beta testing now. No, it was that particular team that had finished their feature level stuff, and now they were preparing to be ready for beta, not the whole game. So that's what I'm saying. There needs to be a little bit of education for us as backers so that we understand when these terms are used, what does that mean for CIG? Not just when I hear beta, I automatically assume that, oh, they're going to go into beta testing now. They were very specific in that letter saying that that particular team was moving to beta, not the whole game. But people saw beta and some of them went crazy and said, oh, the game's going into beta now. I'm not saying it didn't. I'm just saying I don't think that's what it was saying. That was a specific team that they broke that. I think it was the art, wasn't the art team. It was, I forget what team it was now, but somebody was going to beta. There were a couple teams that did that actually, I think.
I didn't realize this till now because I'm looking at it. All the progress tracker for the deliverables for chapters 1 through 20 for Squadron 42 all end in October. So if they go beyond that, they're probably going to wait till they push us on the map, or maybe they're actually done. I don't know.
It's hard to say, right? Because we know the progress tracker it's internal. As to, there are things that can make that extend things even, right? That's all projected. That's all projected, and it could change. And we've seen it happen when we get our letters. They say this was taken out of the road, taken out of the progress tracker, and it pops back in a month later or 2 months later. We'll just have to see. We just have to keep an eye on it and see.
Yeah. Actually, all the Squadron 42 ends in October. There is stuff that goes beyond, like the vehicle content team for the EU does go to December, so that does push out. So, but all the Squadron 42 stuff seems to end in October. We'll see what comes in another month.
Well, we're very close to it, right? I mean, we're September now, so I would think that if somebody knew they had to fudge something, it might have been done by now. If it need to get pushed to November or December, but we'll see. We're only a few weeks away, so we're. As Kai said earlier, hopefully this will be the moment of truth come this CitizenCon. We'll see.
All right, sir. Thank you for your
time. Thank you, buddy. Thanks for coming in. All right, here we go.
Comes from Azuvia, who asks, when we are in a fight, will the wreckage from another player become a navigational hazard to watch out for while we finish the fight? So yes, the answer is yes, absolutely. So as the ship, ships blow apart, they, leave large chunks of wreckage. So we're not going to have, like, you blow up a ship and it just explodes in a fireball and it goes away. So sometimes you'll see a big explosion because the power plant went critical or whatever. But a lot of times it can just be like a, sparking, badly scarred Hornet that's sitting there floating dead in space, and you'll have to watch out because if you hit it while you're flying around, it will, it'll do some damage to you. Okay, next question.
I wish. CIG, please allow us to use multi-tools outside of our ships in space. Please. You can't do a lot of damage with them, but what you can do is move wreckage that's outside of hangars at space stations and places like that. I know the SRV is coming. I know you guys are going to do something where over time certain things can disappear or, go away. Maybe even within those areas and those zones, if there's a crash, it only stays out there for a little while. I don't want it to instantly disappear. That would kind of break immersion. But believe me, I would have no problem if I had to get out of my ship or tell somebody in my ship, go out and EVA out with their tractor beam and move that hunk of metal out the way so we can get in the hangar. That would be cool as far as I'm concerned. But trying to see that stuff in the dark, sometimes you can't dodge it. Sometimes it's in the wrong spot, becomes an issue. I don't mind the fact that there's debris. I just think you should allow us to be able to manage that debris in those areas. But that's just me. Here we go.
Comes from Matu, who asks, will Star Citizens take full advantage of 6 and 8 core CPUs? What about more than 8 or 16 gigabytes
this tells you how far back this
goes. Gigabytes, for instance. Yes, the game will definitely take advantage of multi-core CPUs. CryEngine already has multi-threading in it, so it runs the render in a separate render thread. So it runs the render in a separate CPU thread. It runs the physics in actually several CPU threads. Animations run on another CPU thread. Main game loops in another game thread. I think we've got networking in another thread. So in general, the engine's already fairly multi-threaded, and longer term we're sort of working at adding and doing more of that to take advantage, because that's just the way Monday PCs are going. So it's less about faster clock speed and more CPUs. Memory, definitely. I mean, more memory the better. We'll be able to pre-cache more, and you'll have like higher resolution textures. So if we're running low on the memory side, you'd probably reduce down the textures, say, whereas if you had 16 or 32 bits, you may get them at the full 4K resolution in some cases, or there'll be less disk loading, like we'll be able to pre-cache more into memory. So I would definitely recommend having a multi-core CPU and lots of memory. I mean, most of my machines all have 32 gigs or more. Not saying you have to, because there's a lot of development, so we have lots of applications open at once. And usually we've got six core or 8 core machines here. Okay.
Okay, so just so you guys will know, this is the evolution of the game from when we were back at 8 gig of RAM to 16. I know a lot of people still operated 16. Seems like 32 is becoming the norm, especially for people who maybe upgraded their computers over the last couple of years. And then there are the maniacs like me that are 64 and above. And I'm 64 more because of multitasking and other programs too, but I'm at 64 now. And you definitely see a change in the game performance moving up to 32, no question about it. So if you're doing 8, don't kill yourself. If you're doing 16, hang in there. Be ready to go up to 32 at least for this game, because it's definitely there at least.
Next question comes from Inni, who asks, will we be able to use inertia in order to advance in some direction to avoid using fuel? So yes, definitely. You will 100% be able to. So the flight mode has the sort of fully controlled flight. That's sort of the intelligent flight system that we've talked about. And then you'll also be able to change the flight, change the modes on it, so you can just change your orientation without changing your actual velocity vector. And then also you'll be able to change your velocity vector without changing your orientation. And that will all be easily available from your sort of flight controls. So you'll be able to do all sorts of maneuvers where you can start out in a sort of kind of computer-controlled, flight-controlled manner with full fly-by-wire, and then you turn off aspects of it and move around. So it should be fun. I'm actually kind of interested to see how people do with the dogfight when we put it in people's hands, because it's going to have a lot more ability and options than any game I've done before.
You guys know for this, coupling, decoupling is all a part of that, moving with inertia, turning your ship. But you guys also know that the new master mode stuff is coming in, so check that out. Because Master Modes is definitely a new enhancement to the whole flight model for this game, and it's interesting, so we'll have to see. It's only in Arena Commander, don't forget. It's not in, even though it's in the PTU, it's not in the PTU universe. It's only in Arena Commander right now to test it there, and they're definitely taking comments about it. So if you can get into Arena Commander in 3.20, yeah, then definitely check it out.
Okay, so Krabator asks, my question is, will jump points tend to be near the edges of solar systems? Or will we have the possibility of dangerous jump points, such as coming out near a sun or an asteroid field? Yeah, no, jump points are going to be kind of all over the place. I think our fiction is that the jump points are sort of created by different space anomaly. And, so sometimes that could be close to a sun. And also, maybe there's one near an asteroid field, and that's more of a navigation hazard. So it's going to sort of depend. There'll be different types of jump points, ones that can sort of sustain bigger ships, one that can only take smaller ships. And so, think of them like mountain passes. So some mountain passes are easy and some are more dangerous than others. Okay, next question.
There you go. Okay, so we already know this about jump points, wormholes. They're going to be all over the place, as Chris said. So we'll see. I'm also curious to see, he talks about the sizes again. We just talked about that a couple of the episodes back, different sizes for different types of ships. And I'm curious as whether or not one wormhole will have multiple types of entrances, or whether it'll just be a singular entrance at that particular plot. For some of them, not all of them. If I want a small wormhole, will it only be maybe, on one part of the system? We'll have to see where this goes with that.
Comes from Flashbolts. Will it be possible to rent ships, either from an NPC corp or between players? I would say probably. So we already have in the game, like in part of the design, we're anticipating that potentially you can work for hire. So you can hire another player or another NPC to do jobs for you and let them use your ship. You definitely will be able to lend ships to people. So it makes sense that you should be able to sort of rent some ships too, kind of like it is in real life. So yes, I would think it is going to be possible. Okay, last question.
I hope with the lending ships to other players, they'll allow you to do something like if you want to rent my ship, and I know you, or maybe if I don't know you, I don't know, but I'm going to say if I know you, they should do something that says I can rent you my ship and I can set a timer. I can say 48 hours, 2 days, whatever it is, right? And for that period of time, whether I'm logged in or not logged in the game, you can use that ship. You can spawn it, you can use it. Once that timer is over with, boom, that's it. You don't get it anymore. That way, first of all, I get the ship back. I'm curious to see how they're going to handle things like damage and things like that, though. If someone damages the ship, do they have to take out insurance? Do they have to pay you? Is it automatically deducted from their, when they rent it, it's deducted from them automatically to repair your ship? Or do you eat it as the owner? If it comes back damaged, it's on you, and that person has to pay you. And if they're cool, they'll pay you. And if they don't want to pay you, they don't. You can put a bounty out on them. I don't know. It'll be curious to see where they decide to go with all that.
Question of the 10 here is player 2 up. Can we get a close-up look tour of the model behind your desk? So yes, I think we definitely can. So to let you know, this is the Snake here model from the Wing Commander movie, and it's actually not a model that you saw per se in the film. It was built by the art department on the film as a reference for the 3D modelers to build their 3D model, which is what you would have seen in the film, modeled out. And we actually used Maya. Well, basically the very beta of Maya, even before Maya 1.1, for the Wing Commander movie. And after I finished the film, I had it shipped out from Pinewood, which is where it was built, and had it a digital anvil, and now have it here at Cloud Imperium. And it's pretty cool. I quite like it. So hopefully you guys do too. All right, so thanks very much for joining me for this episode of 10 for the Chairman. Hopefully you found some of the questions interesting and enlightening. And again, thank you to all the subscribers out there, and thank you to all the backers and community in general for enabling us to make the game of my dreams, and I think the game of pretty much hopefully your guys' dreams. I would assume it would be. But we're having a lot of fun. This is a totally different way to make games, and it's a pretty brilliant way to make games. So anyway, I'll see you on the next episode of 10 for the Chairman. Thank you. Bye.
Alrighty then. Those are our 10 for the Chairman for this week. Thank you guys for hanging in there. Griff is going to stream the movie and we can talk about the hairless cats. Yeah, you know what? Eminence CIG sometimes calls it the Star Citizen Alpha Project. Yeah. Maybe that's where people get it. I don't know. And everybody hears different things. I don't have the ear of the world. So Admiral may be right. There may be some people out there who do think it's Star Citizen Alpha. I don't know. Fast card, I'm not sure. I've never heard anybody references as that, but I do hear people referencing it as that it's in alpha. And again, my question is whether or not people really know what that means, because I'm not sure if CIG has ever made it clear what alpha means to them as a company. Anyway, thank you guys so much for the time, for being here today. Cosmic, thank you for the reference earlier. Appreciate that. My good friend Cosmic Trader dropped in earlier and gave us information on the Aegis Surveyor, the ship that is been listed as one of the ships that CIG is going to put out. But we'll see what happens with that. Kaizen, thank you as always for the stimulating conversation. Appreciate you coming in as always, my good friend. Playing BG3. I'm going to have to watch that video of the guy who's killing people with nothing but potatoes. I've got to see that. And as always, Admiral Kusanagi, thank you as well for dropping in, keeping the fire burning on hoping that CIG continues to build out this franchise, because I really do hope that it continues to build out over the years and that we get something substantive. I know you guys are all managing your expectations as we get ready to approach CitizenCon. It's hard to do, right? It's so hard to do because we really, really, really want something of, we want some wow. We really do this time around. And I think it's well deserved for us to receive some wow at this CitizenCon. So let's hope CIG does deliver that. I'm going to give you guys some information later on about CitizenCon and Soul Citizens because we are going to be there this year. We're going to have a table. At least I'm pretty sure we're going to have a table there. Hopefully you guys can come by and see all of the, some of the folks from Star Citizens that are going to be there. I know Yo-Yo's going to be there. Big Black Gaming's going to be there. Myself, Fast, got some other folks. We got a group of people who are going to be there. So hopefully you guys will get to come. We'll get to meet you, shake your hands, and have some laughs and talk about how great the weekend is going that weekend. So hopefully we'll see you there. Other than that, that's it. We're going to wrap it up. Thanks again for hanging out. I got here a little late today, but I'm a little over today as well. But thank you guys for being here. If you're playing Starfield, I hope you're having a fabulous time. If you're playing Baldur's Gate, I hope you're having a fabulous time, because I am. And we'll look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. This Thursday we'll be here for Star Citizen this week and do a little bit of Thursday therapy, and we'll have a good time. So as always, thank you. You know what? I didn't look to see if there's someone I can raid. Let's see who's on today. Show me. Why am I getting weird messages from my Google thing today? Give me 1 second here, gang. Who's around? Who's on? Arc? No.
I'm about to be out of prison.
I gotta.
He's here again.
Why does it always do that? It always comes on unmuted for some reason. Let's raid Marcus. Unique's not on right now. Tell you what we'll do. I'm gonna send you guys over to. I tried to do this raid a couple weeks ago, and it didn't work because I didn't put an extra underscore under his name. So this week I'm gonna make up for it. We're gonna raid. See if it works. Did it work? It didn't work. Why didn't it work? Hang on a second here. Raid. Oh, no wonder. My bad typos. Let's see if that one works. Okay, that one worked. Okay, we're going to raid Avenger 1. Avenger 1 is over there playing Star Citizen right now. You guys can go over and check them out. Let them know that you came over from this channel. Thank you all so much again for hanging out with me this afternoon. Stay safe, take care of yourselves, and as always, peace, love, and soul. See you soon. Bye.